Well, this is a fuel injector replacement project, or just a fuel injector replacement for a 1992 Ford Mustang LX 5-liter. Sorry that it didn't occur to me to go ahead and maybe do a helpful video before the project got started, so we're about halfway through. But I thought I'd share some of my lessons learned. Maybe we can help somebody else out. So we'll start off with, first off, the reason why we're replacing injectors on this particular car is because we had a really poor running condition, just horrible miss at idle. We went through the usual suspects with the idle air control valve, mass airflow sensor, EGR, things like that, cleaning all those items, really achieving no result in terms of improving the running condition. Vehicle also had a new fuel pump, fuel tank, fuel filter, etc. Really felt like the problem was just a miss in a particular cylinder. We didn't go with any key-on engine running tests or anything like that. Just went straight to brute force diagnostics, as I would call them, and decided to go ahead and replace the fuel injectors. So the state we're in now is we have removed the upper intake manifold, disconnected everything from the throttle body. As you can see, the manifold's over there. I didn't disconnect all the hoses from the manifold because just moving to the side was enough to get it out of the way. But I did want to share some of my lessons learned. Hopefully that'll help folks out if they're doing a similar project. First thing that you're supposed to do when you do this is relieve the fuel pressure in the fuel line. So apparently there's two ways to do that. One way is inside the engine compartment here, right underneath all these spark plug wires, and down a little bit here. I don't know if we can see it if we get all the wires out of the way. Right behind the air conditioner thing, right down there, there's a little Schrader valve. You can go ahead and open that Schrader valve. There's a special tool, but I suspect you could probably just open it with a screwdriver or something. You're going to release fuel out of there, so having a rag around would be helpful. So that's one way you can do it. Second way that you could go ahead and deal with releasing the fuel pressure, or relieving the fuel pressure, would be going into the trunk. And I've already done this. And once right behind the taillight, there is a connection for the fuel cutoff switch, which I've taken off the car. And this is the switch that shuts the fuel pump off in the event you're in a rear-end collision. And what you can do with that is you can disconnect it electrically and then go and crank the motor, which will relieve the fuel pressure in the fuel lines. Now I did that, and apparently didn't do quite enough. Although it didn't go spraying everywhere, there was definitely some fuel left on the fuel rails. So definitely have a rag or something around when you're taking things apart. So the first thing that I would say you want to be aware of is, on here we've got, right down here, there are this is the linkage for the accelerator to connect to the throttle body. That came off without too much of an issue, but there's also this other piece of linkage here, which I believe is for the cruise control, and that has a cotter pin in it. No big deal to get that out. However, there's a washer that is seated in the linkage that's on the throttle body. You're going to want to go ahead and make sure you pop that out with your hand after you've released all of the connections, because mine fell out and is gone to the land of misplaced and lost washers inside the engine compartment someplace. So I suspect I'm going to have fun trying to hunt one of those down. Second thing that I learned that you should do is I went in and disconnected the fuel rail by taking, there's 4 bolts, I believe they're like 8mm, that you can take out, that hold the fuel rails or the fuel manifold to the lower intake manifold. And I pulled up on those to pull the fuel injector rails off the fuel injectors. So some of them pulled the fuel injectors out of the manifold, some of them came off the top of the fuel injectors. Key thing here is it's suggested that you take the electrical connections off of the fuel injectors first. I think you could probably go either way with that. However, the one thing you want to be really careful with is, especially on the old cars, all these fuel injector connectors are plastic and they're kind of brittle and easy to break. So if you take a look at that one right there, you can see we broke the clip off of that. Actually, I think previous owner broke that one and I broke this one right here. One of the things you definitely want to do as soon as you get the upper intake off is fill those holes that go down into the head, or to your head and through your intake manifold there, with something to make sure that you don't get any unwanted items drop down into the cylinder heads. So that's it so far on there. The other thing that I did while I was at it here, I figured no time like the present to replace the fuel pressure regulator, which is this guy right here. It's probably a very worthwhile endeavor. It's about 20 bucks. You can get over at AutoZone. You can get different ones through more performance rated ones through BBK and companies like that for maybe about the same, 20-30 bucks online. The bolts that hold this guy in are underneath. There's 3 of these. They are a hex-headed bolt, and I was able to take those out real quick with a 3/8 drive ratchet and a Allen keyed bit. I highly recommend doing it that way. You don't want to use a regular Allen key, otherwise you'll be there all day. Let me see if I can get the size for that for you. Looks like the size on that one was 5/32, so it's a little hex-headed 3/8 drive socket. Came in and out. Replacing that was really simple. It took all of about 5 minutes. I think the key on that's having the right tool, otherwise you're going to lose your mind. So I pulled out, after all this, I pulled out the old injectors, and let me go ahead and I'm going to take a walk over to the old injectors. Again, I apologize for this being a strange video, but anyway, these are the old injectors. This is 1 through 4, and this batch here is 5 through 8. On mine, it looks like 1 and 5 have a slightly different colored pintail on them. I don't know if that was stock or if those were replaced, or vice versa. If they look like they're in a little better condition than the ones that are kind of orangey. I believe that it had a poor running condition, mostly emanating from the cylinders 5 through 8. And looking at these fuel injectors, number 7, if you take a look at it, it looks kind of damaged right there. I don't know if that was damaged when I pulled it out. It's very, very brittle. Or if it was just damaged in the cylinder like that, and we're going to find out here in a little bit whether or not the fuel injectors were my running problem. I'll go ahead and finish up, and I'll post a second video. We'll see how things are going at that point. Thanks a lot. I hope this helps somebody out. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and leave some feedback, and I'll see if I can answer them.